Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Knowledge Insights. My name is James Chi, and today I am joined here with Karen Stevens from Bcyber. Karen, thank you very much for being here. It's great to get you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I know I've had a bit of privilege seeing what Bcyber has come up with from its founding days, but now you yourself are nominated for awards, and seeing just it's been 12 months since the business has really started, you've really kicked some goals in that time. I'm really excited to hear about what you and the company are seeing in the world of cybersecurity.
I will do my best to answer.
Now, Karen, I know you have quite the following in the industry, but for those listeners out there who aren't familiar with you or Bcyber, would you be able to explain a little bit about yourself and your role?
Sure. Well, firstly, Bcyber. So Bcyber is a cybersecurity company. We work with groups to harden their cyber risk prevention programs. We have our own proprietary services, so ones that we've developed ourselves, and then we distribute a small select number of innovative third-party solutions, and the focus is to help strengthen their cybersecurity postures. I'm the CEO, and look, as the CEO of a startup, you've got to be prepared to turn your hand at many things. I make sure that we're on track to deliver service excellence to our current client base, work with the team to develop new clients. We also have to continue our focus on R&D, and we're making amazing headway here with Sybil. She's our virtual conversational agent. It's never ending.
Okay. And it's hard to deny that digital literacy and cybersecurity issues have come to the foreground in this pandemic era of business. And whether or not it's a result of the public health or whatnot, in my opinion, I think the shift in modes of work and also the types of work have self-created a demand for individuals trained in this market. From Bcyber's perspective, there's obviously a lot from the government initiatives and funding that is coming through, market events, and also regulation. Not only do businesses have to consider the cost of getting cyber protection, but they also need to consider the cost of not having that protection. Maybe explain what you're seeing or hearing in terms of the feedback, news, and also scandals, and also present and emerging cybersecurity issues in the news.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so look, I think we need to start with basic tin tacks. What we've noticed is that basic cyber hygiene hasn't been mastered. We're continually seeing breaches. In fact, the latest Australian Cybersecurity Centre, so the ACSC report, said that since July 1 of last year, there have been 59,806 cybercrimes reported. So if you have a look at the numbers, that's an average of about 164 per day, or one reported every 10 minutes. And then if we look more closer to home, this week, the New South Wales government, Service New South Wales, made international news for all the wrong reasons. They confirmed a data leak dating back to April of this year, where they've lost 186,000 customers and staff data. It was leaked, as I said, in April. They've taken 4 months to investigate. They've said that they've looked at about 3.8 million files, which seems about right. But of that, 500,000 have referenced personal information, and that's really not ideal. And then we've also had ASIC commencing court proceedings against RI Advice for failing to provide adequate cybersecurity systems. Allegedly, it was what they call a brute force attack. So that's old school method. Cybercrims still love it. It's essentially where you do a bit of a trial and error to guess the login info, encryption keys, or to try to find that hidden web page. And then they work out all the possible combinations. And then depending on how strong your passwords are, that determines the length of how long the brute force attack goes on for. If it's short, it means your passwords are small and need work, and if it takes longer, then a little bit more complex. So according to ASIC, the ASIC website, the malicious user for RI successfully gained remote entry into the server and spent more than 155 hours logged into their server, and that contained sensitive client data, identifying documentation. So look, cyber activity is increasing. A couple of themes that we've noticed this year. We've seen the rise of ransomware, especially extortionist ransomware. So that's essentially where you get the cybercrime coming in, rummaging around your files, starting the encryption, and then when you log in the morning, they say, "Hey Karen, your data's encrypted, pay up." So generally speaking, you've got two traditional options. You either pay up. Now, if you pay up, you have to consider where the cyber criminal is based and who they are. I mean, you could be giving money to an enemy nation state, or you could be giving money to some really bad people like people smugglers and things. Do you want to have that on your conscience? The other option is don't pay up, hope that your backup hasn't been encrypted, and unfortunately that's happening more and more often. And even if it hasn't been encrypted and you can get the data back, that means that the cybercrime still has all that personal data, and if they dump it or sell it to the highest bidder on the dark web, where does that leave your clients? I mean, it's a no-win situation. We're very fortunate at Bcyber to be working with a group out of Denmark who focus on last line of defense. So we make the assumption that yes, the bad guys will get through, but then we stop them within seconds of getting through and encrypting. The other thing that we've seen the rise of, especially during COVID, is ransomware as a service. And this is quite interesting because the cyber crims are coming out with these amazing business propositions. Like, we don't typically think of a cyber crim as a business organization, but they are. I mean, they're not the disgruntled kid in its parents' garage anymore. These are businesses, and they're there to make money. So essentially what ransomware as a service, or RAS as they call it in the trade, it's like you pay a fee and then you get access to all of their coding and all of their ransomware. So it means that the less technical bad guys on a subscription basis can then implement ransomware attacks. So because it is a business, depending on how many successful ransomware payments you get, will actually impact how much you get to take home. If you've only had a small number of successes, you're looking at probably a 60-40 split, a larger number, 70-30 split. So it's an amazing model, and it's one that we're all familiar with.
So following on, do you see those trends that you've just identified, such as the ransomware as a service, as being something that will underpin the industry for the next 1 to 10 years?
Well, I don't know if we'll make it to 10 years. These things change so fast. But they're making money. I can't see how they won't continue to do it while it's making money. And because, of COVID, unfortunately, people are in quarantine and having to work from home more regularly. And that means the attack vector has been extended. So instead of having everyone sequestered away in their CBD office where they've got great firewalls and great AV and all the rest of it, you're now relying on staff to use their own home Wi-Fi, which who knows what happens on that. They might even be using, heaven forbid, their own devices. They might have the kids using their own devices. It's just an absolute feast for the bad guy. So, while it's working, I think they'll just do it. So ransomware as a service, definitely here to stay. We had an interesting situation beginning of August where a group who had been using RAS came out on the dark web and actually said that the product wasn't fit for purpose for what they wanted to do, so they went out on their own and made up their own. So product development in the cyberscape is here to stay. How fast it will be, I'm not sure. We just need to be faster.
So you just mentioned work from home and city offices. I think it's interesting that you also have this background in financial services, because it gives you that exclusive look into the cyber challenges that certain institutions are faced with. Obviously, employees coming in and out of the organisation, personal data, transparency, privacy. There's so many moving parts that are involved in making an organisation run. But since everything is now digital and automated, how important should it be for these types of companies that handle this type of sensitive and valuable data? And to add to that, do the gatekeepers of the organisation, such as the managers, board of directors, and other stakeholders, also have that duty to protect and secure their customers, shareholders, and employees? Obviously, it's difficult to separate all of them, but there's clearly some value at risk, and I would imagine that balancing the effectiveness of the measures with the practicality of implementing them would be the primary challenge in this ecosystem design.
Look, it's not easy. You're quite right. I come from more of a business background, so having come into cyber and sort of learning everything new, I found it quite interesting that while dissimilar, there are so many similarities. As in financial services, people tend to talk in acronyms, shorthand, and expect a certain level of knowledge. The same in the cyberspace. And I think that's where perhaps the disconnect has come. So you've got, super trustees or boards who've got the added stress of knowing that the buck stops with them and you can't outsource your responsibilities. But what they're not doing is they're not asking questions. So the cybersecurity subject matter expert will come in and say, look, this is where we are in the risk matrix. Isn't it great? I need a bit more money for next gen AV. Bing, bang, boom. They're done in 5 to 10 minutes. I think those days are well and truly behind us. I was talking to our chairman the other day, Jack Diamond, and he did this great article. And he said, you've got to channel Professor Julius Sumner Miller and ask, why is it so? So when people who are subject matter experts in cybersecurity come in to present, ask questions. So, an example might be, and this is just a basic level of hygiene, staff awareness programs. Do you have one? And if the answer is yes, you tick the box and then you move on. That's not what you should be doing. If the answer is yes, then you should dive a little bit deeper. How often do you review it? Are there posters around? Do you actually look at the analytics that come out of the results of the tests? An example of that would be if you have frontline staff and they're all doing their online learning with cybersecurity, that's great, and they're doing it within time, super great. What are they getting wrong? And are they getting the same thing wrong consistently? Because if they are, then you have a problem. Generally speaking, your staff are your most precious commodity and your best advertisement, but they're also your weakest link in the cybersecurity chain. Around 22% of all data breaches in Australia, and this is according to the 2020 IBM data breach report, were a result of human error. So someone clicking on one malicious link once. Like, it doesn't take a lot. So you really need to have a look at the analytics and do a deep dive into any staff awareness program. And if you've had the same awareness program for the last 2, 3, 4 years, for heaven's sake, review it. Is it right? I mean, you wouldn't have the same auditor for that period of time. You can't. So why should you have the same provider of education? Are they moving as fast as they need to? And are they making it relevant and interesting for the staff? Because if the staff don't find it relevant and interesting, they will do the tick box themselves. They'll do enough to get through, but it won't sink in. And you've got to do all you can to help them have the knowledge to make the right choices.
So you've mentioned that employees are the most important for the business, but also weakest link in cybersecurity. Yes. So what are the top 3 challenges that you're observing that are causing rework or vulnerabilities in a cyber ecosystem? Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't get back on the soapbox, but I will reiterate poor staff awareness programs. They need to be more than tick a box. So I will leave it at that. I think the next one is that corporates are not looking beyond the traditional perimeter preventions, like, next gen AV, whitelisting, air gapping. Look, they're all essential, but nothing is 100% effective 100% of the time. If it was, we wouldn't see the likes of Toll, Lion, Pitney Bowes, all of whom had 2 breaches this year. I mean, these are the big guys. They're spending bucket loads, and yet they're still getting breached. So I think corporates need to think beyond the traditional, and this is not just the big guys, I think this is the small guys as well, because as I've said earlier, you've traditionally only got 2 options: pay up, and who knows where your money will go and what it will fund; don't pay up and hope your backup isn't encrypted, and that the cybercrime doesn't dump or sell your data to the highest bidder, all of which happens on a disturbingly regular basis. There are websites on the dark web that are just auction sites for data. You need to be aware of this. So I think corporates need to look at implementing a 3rd option, a last line of defense that stops encryption in its tracks once it gets through. And look, a shameless plug, yes, we do have something like this, so contact us so we can organise a ransomware assessment, because it's important. You don't know what you don't know. And I think the 3rd one, and I'll try not to get on my soapbox again because this is one of my favourites, it's the forgotten attack vector of mobile devices. The majority of people who are listening to this and who are out there would have a mobile device of some description: phone, iPad, whatever it happens to be. And I would say that the vast majority of them would have no additional security on it. They say, oh, I don't need to because my iPhone can't get hacked. Yeah, no, it can. Oh, I've got an Android, that's the best. It still has problems. Nothing, once again, is 100% secure 100% of the time. And if you have a look at the way people treat apps, for example, on mobile phones, if you want an app, and I'll just pick on, say, Zoom for an example, everyone's aware of it. if you type in Zoom, you get umpteen options of Zoom. Which one is the right one? How many people actually, when they select an app, go right down to the bottom and check who actually created it to make sure that you're getting source? I would guarantee not a high percentage, to be honest. And, are you still using public Wi-Fi on your phone? I'm hoping not, but, if you're traveling or if your data is about to be used up because you've been hotspotting on it for work, then you might think, just one moment. No, some people even use, and this is a horrid one, power cords. If you don't own the power cord, for heaven's sakes, don't use it. And the reason for that is because it can actually have a malicious virus in it. Things like that, people are just not thinking. So if you don't have security on your mobile device, get it. And once again, you need to have both endpoints. So that's the security that sits on the mobile device itself. But you also need to have something in the VPN if it's connected to a VPN. So you need to have both pieces there. But they're sort of the main challenges I think we're facing. And look, traditionally in business, what happens is you get hacked and then you improve security. I have a suggestion. How about we review security now before we get hacked and do what we can to stop it should they actually get past our prevention measures.
Right, so more proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. And people go, but it must be so expensive. It can be. I won't lie. I mean, it can be as little or as much as you are willing to pay. But having antivirus is not the be-all and end-all of cybersecurity. If you have AV and you go, but I'm a small company, I can't afford too much, have a look online. Bcyber has a number of free training tools. Get the staff so that they actually understand what is out there. And it doesn't matter if you are a financial services company, a mattress factory or whatever. If you have a connection to the internet, you really need to be proactive in the way that you educate your staff and look after your accesses.
So Karen, just following on with the whole at-risk proposition for cybersecurity, has the Australian government legislated anything to put the onus more on the business or to make it as though consumers can be confident in where they're placing their data?
They're trying. Always room for improvement. I mean, if we have a look at like APRA, for example, so they regulate super funds and credit institutions. So they've got a thing called APRA CPS 234, and that focuses on making sure that the APRA regulated entity takes measures to be resilient against information security incidents, cyber attacks, for example, and, by maintaining some sort of, information security capability. And that's great. What they don't have is a tick chart. So they don't say, if you do this, this will happen. And I don't think you can in cyber. Another example is the TPB practice note that came out the other day. It's only in draft, so for those of you who are listening, if you get in before the 30th of September, you can have your say. But it specifically addresses the issue of cyber risk and tax file numbers. Interestingly, it actually does present a list of, I think there's about 8 or 9 things that they recommend you should do. It's only in draft format. And look, there are many others. The government is trying, but I think it's a combined effort. Technology and cybersecurity isn't just the remit of the IT guys. It's all of our problems. If you say who is responsible for cybersecurity, absolutely everyone. From, the school kid or your kids who you're homeschooling at the moment, through to the MD of a large corporate. Everyone is responsible for it because the downside of losing data on the dark web is just so high.
Very fascinating. And Karen, before we go, is there anything else that you would like to let the listeners know that you or Bcyber have going on?
We're actually working on some very exciting proprietary virtual conversational assistants. And the theory is they're going to make life easier when applying for or claiming on your cyber insurance policy. So watch this space. Sybil is coming.
Awesome. Karen, thank you very much for your time today. We definitely covered some good topics, and we could probably talk about this for another hour or so, but
we might lose people.
We might lose people, yes, exactly. And, we raised some really interesting points, especially with the end-to-end type of protection and encryption of IoT devices. And I think, given the current working environment, everyone has to be mindful of what they're either accessing, clicking on links, or where they're connecting to the internet.
Exactly. And, just if I can, with patching that comes out on a regular basis, Patch Tuesday's gone from, 20, 30 patches to over 100 for every month for the last 6 months. So, if you are on your device, be it iPad or Android device, and a little note pops up and says, you need to update, don't press remind me later.
And that concludes this week's episode of Knowledge Insights. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.